What's up, you guys? It's Jose Zuniga from Teaching Men's Fashion, and for today we're going to be talking about the do's and the don'ts when it comes to men's jewelry. So we're going to be talking about watches, we're going to be talking about bracelets, about rings, about piercings. So if you've had questions in any of these of whether you should do something or not do something, this video is for you. So let's get into it. Let's start with bracelets. Do mix and match. What this means is that you are allowed to stack multiple bracelets on one wrist if you choose to do so, but keep it at 2 max. If you look at a lot of my lookbook videos where I'm showing you how to style outfits, sometimes I like to stack one bracelet and one watch on one wrist. That's completely acceptable. The contrast from a classy watch to a beaded bracelet is sometimes pleasurable. However, if you're feeling more minimal, always ditch the bracelet first and keep the watch. The watch will always be the anchor jewelry piece for any man. Don't follow the arm candy trend. And what this means is that you're not going to want to pile on multiple pieces of jewelry on one wrist, because then it just becomes childish and almost like a really loud call for attention. Not only that, each piece of jewelry doesn't get the attention it deserves. When you start piling like 10 bracelets on your wrist, each piece of jewelry just kind of gets lost in a sea of accessories. So don't follow the arm candy trend. It just looks a little tacky. Now let's move on to watches. Do build an appropriate collection. You can watch my watch collection above here. But I think every man should try to strive to build a proper collection, because each piece that you acquire will serve its purpose. If you don't know where to start to build your collection, here's a small checklist that I personally used to build mine. Now, obviously yours could differ because you want different things. But for example, I wanted one minimal watch that I could use anytime and not have to think about it. I wanted one dive watch because I just love the rugged aesthetics of a dive watch. I also wanted a sports watch, something a little bit cheaper that I could just use when I'm running or training. I also needed a good dressy watch, something I could wear with a tuxedo and something I could wear in a business setting. And finally, I wanted some sort of chronograph, something with a busier dial that was a little bit more complex. So this chronograph that you're seeing right here is from Grand Frank. So I have a lot of clothing from Grand Frank, and I've talked about them before. I have their suits, I have their shirts, and their ties, but I've never tried their beaded bracelets or their chronograph watches, and I've always liked the clean aesthetics that they have and presented online. So I decided to pick some up, and I've been using it for about a week to 2 weeks, and I'm really digging their style. I think one huge pro of the watch is, like I said, is the clean aesthetics. I love the busy dial, and I'm loving the butterfly clasp. That for me is always a huge plus for a watch, because it facilitates that putting on and off of a watch. So my final verdict with the Grand Frank watches is that they're just as good as their clothing. Their items are really competitively priced. So if you want to check out this chronograph and want to add a good chrono to your collection, I'm going to have Grand Frank linked down below so you guys can check out the watches and see what I'm talking about. Now for watches, you don't want to wear a watch out of its place. What does this mean? This means that you don't want to be the guy that wears a Casio G-Shock with a tuxedo or a suit. Or you want to be the guy that wears maybe some dressy chrono like this with basketball shorts and J's. You want to wear a watch accordingly and style it in the appropriate outfit. Now let's move on to rings. Do limit yourself to one ring at most. Now I have seen guys be able to pull off 2 rings sometimes, but me personally, I always recommend 1 ring because I think this is the safe zone. So if you have a wedding band, stick to that. If you don't, then pick up some sort of signet ring that has some sort of meaning. I've used a signet ring before. I don't use one anymore, but I used to do it about a year ago, and that one actually has meaning to me. So that ring was given from my grandfather to my father, and then from my father, he gave it to me. Don't wear a ring in every finger. I've seen this as a trend coming up lately, and more of like that high street fashion. It's really weird, and it kind of just looks a little tacky. Piercings. Now this one's a little bit more dangerous and a little bit harder to pull off. I personally would tell you to do no piercings at all. It's just not my cup of tea, and I don't think it looks appropriate in a gentleman's setting. However, I have seen guys be able to pull off the earring. So if you're gonna do piercings, limit it to 1 to maybe 2 just on your earlobes. Don't get experimental. Some guys go through a phase, usually through your early stages, of trying to get a little bit experimental with their piercing, and they start piercing their lip and their nose and their eyebrows and then like 5 down their ear. Don't do that. Don't get huge gauges. Don't get experimental with your piercings. Like I said, if you must pierce yourself because you really want to, keep it to your earlobes only and keep it minimal. Something small, something that's not too ostentatious and crazy. Alright guys, so that's it for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it. These are basically the do's and the don'ts when it comes to men's jewelry, and I think these are rules that almost all guys need to follow. So I'm going to have the jewelry that I used linked down below in case you like any of it. That's it for me in this video. See you next time.